I'm Mindy Peterson, and this is Enhance Life with Music, where we explore the practical ways music transforms everyday life, health, happiness, and beyond. Pretty much all of us have experienced either being hospitalized or visiting someone we love in the hospital. And for most of us, this is a pretty stressful experience, not a pleasant one. The only exception I can think of is when my son was 13. He had an emergency appendectomy. And once he recovered from surgery and was beyond that pain, he loved being waited on hand and foot by the nurses. He didn't have any chores. He was allowed to watch TV all day if he wanted to. He had a motorized bed that he loved playing with. So I had to pry him out of that hospital with a crowbar. But for the vast majority of us, being in a hospital brings anxiety, fear, pain, loneliness, stress for patients for sure, but also for the loved ones and even the staff who care for them. And this time of year during the holidays, those emotions are only amplified. Enter the nonprofit Musicians on Call. For over 25 years, this organization has been matching volunteers with healthcare facilities nationwide to deliver the healing power of music where it is most needed. Its musicians have performed for more than 1.2 million patients, making it the nation's leading provider of live music in hospitals. Today, we're joined by Musicians on Call's COO, Katy Epley, to explore how Musicians on Call spreads notes of hope and healing when people need them most, and also why demand for these programs is skyrocketing, and how we may want to join people like Bruce Springsteen and Kelsey Ballerini in being part of this mission. Welcome to Enhance Life with Music, Katy.
Thank you so much, Mindy. I'm so excited to be here with you. And it's so funny about your son not wanting to leave the hospital. That is rare.
Well, believe me, I couldn't wait to get out of there. I'm like,
I'm sure.
I'm about ready to start bribing him. Like, please, just let's go home.
Yeah.
So he did talk me into letting him spend the night because the night
Oh.
previously, leading up to us realizing he had this appendix issue, he was in so much pain overnight. And I didn't realize that he woke me up really early in the morning. And he was a little bit traumatized about going home and experiencing another night like that of being in pain.
That makes
And
sense.
so I'm like, okay, you can spend the night because they had given him permission to leave that evening. And so I'm like, okay, you can spend the night. I stay there with him. And by the next morning, I was like climbing the walls, like, let's get out of here.
Yep.
So,
I
but
can
yes,
understand that.
yeah, most people do not want to be hospitalized for good reason. It's stressful. And
Mhm.
I talking about my kids, my daughter came up to visit him the evening
Mhm.
that he was there. She was really stressed by that. She's
Yeah.
his big sister, and seeing him in that situation was really stressful for her.
Yeah.
So tell us about Musicians on Call. How do
Yeah.
you describe the heart of the organization? And tell us what delivering the healing power of music looks like in practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what you just described, being in a hospital room with your son, with your daughter coming to visit him, like that is just paints the picture of exactly what we do. We walk into a hospital, we're assigned a certain floor to go to, and a volunteer guide knocks on the door, and they go in and they say, "Hi, I'm Katy. I'm with Musicians on Call. Would you like to hear a song?" And usually the family is like, a song? And I'm like, yeah, I have a live musician in the hallway that will come in right to your bedside and play a song just for you. And 9 times out of 10, they say, yeah, come on in. And we bring the musician in, and everyone is surprised. They're like, oh, I wasn't expecting this, right? It's not normal to, when you're in the hospital, to have someone with a guitar walk in to your room and play you a song. So typically the volunteer guide would ask, what kind of music do you like? And then the musician would probably play something as close to what that patient likes as they know.
Okay.
And they would do one song right there at their bedside. And, for the siblings that are there, that's a chance for them to feel normal again, to see that, their brother or sister laughing, dancing, smiling. Like, it really provides some normalcy in those kind of situations. So that is Musicians on Call at its core. We are a nonprofit organization. We bring live and recorded music to the bedsides of patients. in healthcare environments. And that is our mission. And we do that by having, like I described, a volunteer guide and a volunteer musician going room to room to play directly at the bedsides of patients who are unable to leave their beds. So we're not really just visiting patients, we're visiting the patients, the family members, and also the caregivers who are there around the clock taking care of patients. And,
Mm.
especially right now in the holidays, they don't get Christmas off a lot of times. They don't get Thanksgiving or other holidays. And so, you know, a lot of times people want to go into the hospital and give back during the holidays, which is fantastic. But, caregivers need support all year long. Veterans need support all year long. So, like, our programs aren't just at the holidays or Veterans Day. We go into the hospitals all year long to bring music and joy to patients, families, and caregivers.
That's interesting that you mentioned that about the holidays. That can be a time where people are more inclined to volunteer. And that just reminds me when I was teaching a studio, piano students, for a time, we would go into senior centers at
Mhm,
Christmas time and do sort
mhm,
of our Christmas recital in
mhm,
one of the senior centers. And I did that for a couple of years, and then ended up one of the senior centers said to me, and I'm so glad they clued me into this, they said,
mhm,
"We get overwhelmed with
mhm,
offers for this at Christmas time. Would you ever consider doing another time of year? Because we love having these groups come in, but we
mhm.
get overwhelmed at Christmas time, and then we get nothing the rest of the
The
year."
rest of the
So
year. Yep.
yeah, so interesting.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned the live music and you said recorded music. So tell us
Right.
how the recorded music offering works.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, when I first started at Musicians on Call almost 19 years ago.
Which is almost
So
as long as they've been in existence, right?
I know, right? Yeah, it was a long time ago. So when I first started, we would box CDs, different CDs, and put them like 200 CDs in a box with a CD Walkman for anyone who's listening that remembers what that is.
Oh, yeah.
And batteries, 2 little AA batteries we would tape to it and mail those to hospitals around the country. But we have, definitely upgraded with the times. And so now we have Amazon Fire tablets that we send to hospitals that are preloaded with streaming music. Bose has donated headphones, noise canceling headphones that we can send with those. So that way, if someone doesn't have a device with Spotify or Apple Music or something like that, we can send them music that we've curated playlists that, one of the playlists is called Dose of Joy that has like healing anthems and different
Mm.
songs on that. Other ones are, Chill Refill, which is like the more relaxing music that people might want to hear. So that is our MOC streaming program, but our primary program is our MOC bedside program. And that's what I was describing, how the volunteers go room to room. We've also adapted that program to include virtual performances. So that way,
Thank you,
we can't
COVID,
be,
I think,
yeah, I
right?
know, right?
That's
We were
sort of
forced
come
to
out
do
of the
that.
pandemic.
Yeah, we were kind of forced to do that in the pandemic, which was, you know, actually, I hate to say that we thrived during the pandemic, but that is when like Jason Derulo volunteered with Musicians on Call and all these other artists that, everyone was at the beginning of COVID were stuck in their homes.
Mm,
And,
sure.
they couldn't get out and perform for people. And so we had, everyone from Reba to Darius Rucker, Jason Derulo. I mean, we had all these artists that would do special programs for not just patients in the hospitals, but caregivers who were, on the front lines being essential workers. And so we
Yes.
tried to do as much as we could to give back. So we would host Zooms where the nurses and staff could get on the Zoom and interact with the musicians. And it was of course, a hard time for everyone, but it was really special to have so many people who wanted to help others and wanted to
Mm,
give back to the frontline caregivers during that time. So
yeah.
that's MOC virtual, where we can have a guide and a musician on the screen. Hospitals can do closed circuit TV where they can put it on their TV screens in the patient rooms for them to watch. We do a special Hope for the Holidays program, which is coming up, that we do every year. That's like a pre recorded program. But then we also have weekly program that's live. So we have a volunteer guide and a musician that's tailored for pediatric patients, or one that's for veterans, and one for behavioral health. So
Mm.
try to hit all of the audiences that was something that they would be kind of up their alley.
Nice. And I know your website's real clear that this is not music therapy, it's
Right.
entertainment.
Mhm.
Now, I think you also offer some kind of a songwriting program on a more limited basis, like
Right.
just for special requests or special grants. Can you tell us
Mhm.
just real quick about that?
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of the MOC songwriting. I've had one of my favorite experiences with that was we had a grant in Nashville to do a program with the senior center, and it's where we write and record music with patients. And so we came in to the senior center, and there was about 10 to 12 seniors that participated. And the first day, everybody was about 5 minutes late. They show up and they're like, "What are we doing? What do we have to do? We're required to be here," that attitude. And then we
Okay.
start talking about what we're doing, and we're playing music and we're writing songs. And then we were there every week for 6 weeks. And then the next time we came, everybody was on time. And then the next time
Oh,
we came, everyone was in their best dressed outfits and like
oh,
really participating. And by the end of it, there was a patient who had really long hair. It was a man with really long hair, but he didn't have any legs. He was in a wheelchair. And his lyric that he wrote was, that he still, he had a chance to dance and that he
oh,
still has his hair. And,
oh,
it was like this song all about joy and the things that we're grateful for. I think the song was called
mm,
I Am Grateful. And
mm.
so everyone went around listing all the things that they're grateful for. And by the end of it, we had a song called I Am Grateful. And for anyone who knows Nashville, in Nashville, there's a place called Music Row. And on Music Row is where all the buildings where if you write a number one song, they'll put a banner up that says the name of your song written by, whoever. And so one of the women was probably in her 80s and she said, I moved to Nashville when I was 16 and I always dreamed of having my name on a banner for writing a hit song. And so by the end of this MOC songwriting, we had written this song. We had it made onto a CD that we got to give to everyone, and we had them perform it in the cafeteria. And we made a banner that said "I am grateful" with their song title and all their names who it was written by. And we hung that banner in the cafeteria. And I hope to think that, that really meant a lot to her.
Oh, very cool. You've said that the research supporting the healing power of music is now so strong that you can't expand quickly enough to meet demand. Are there specific studies or technologies or real world outcomes that are really driving this increased interest?
There's so many studies. Every time I turn around, I feel like someone sending me a new study on music and health. And, we know that music has been proven to lower blood pressure. It reduces anxiety and depression and sometimes helps suppress pain in patients in the hospitals. And so, there's all kinds of research that shows that. But I don't know that that is the thing that's increasing the demand. My opinion is that there's so many people who don't want to be in hospitals anymore after COVID. They don't want to be around anybody who's sick. And there used to be all of these people volunteering, not just with musicians on call, but in hospitals in general that
Oh,
just aren't doing that anymore. Like
ah,
volunteerism is really, really down. And I think that we're getting all of these inquiries from hospitals trying to bring new programs into their hospital because there's just not enough to, for the caregivers, for the patients, for the people, patient satisfaction, helping with patient experience, giving them, the experience of being in a hospital, as you mentioned with your son. You were ready to go home,
oh yeah.
and so trying to bring a little bit of light and joy. I think hospitals are craving that
Sure.
more than anything.
Mm. Well, and you mentioned earlier something about the introduction of that musician and that live music really brings some normalcy to
Hmm.
the environment, the room
Hmm.
for both the patient and for their loved ones or caregivers, whoever's in the room with them. And music really can transform the environment.
Right.
It can. I've heard people describe it as bringing the humanity into the
Hmm.
room that otherwise is feeling very sterile,
Yeah.
and anxiety producing, especially if you're in a hospital room. Can you tell us about some of the most meaningful changes that you've seen in a patient or a hospital environment when music is introduced in this way?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in as I said, I've been here 19 years and I have been in thousands of hospital rooms. And there have been so many times where I have gone into a patient's room where the patient is non-responsive, where, the caregiver has said, "Oh, you can play for them, but they're not gonna respond." And
Mm.
then the musician starts playing, and then you see their toe start tapping to
Oh
the
my.
music.
Oh, wow.
And when that happens, it's just unbelievable. And,
Mhm.
and we call these things that happen like that MOC moments. So, like, around here, our staff, if you say, like, "Oh my gosh, I had an MOC moment last night,"
Oh,
someone has this story of, like, something that you couldn't have, made happen if you tried. And, one day I was at, a hospice center, and, we went in and played for a woman, and she was unresponsive, and the musician walked in, and there was a caregiver sitting, like, in the room with her, and he just started playing a song. And, that song, "Every Rose Has a Thorn," that's not the title, but that's the lyric, right?
okay.
And he started playing that song, and the caregiver just started crying. And he played the whole song, and at the end, she just looked at him with tears in her eyes, and she said, "How did you know how did you know to play that song?" And he was like, "Well, I just when I walked in here, I just felt like that was the song I chose for her today." And she said, "When I come on my shift, every day I walk in here and I play that song because that is her favorite song."
Oh my
And,
goodness.
like, how does that happen?
Wow.
So there's just been over the years, like, things like that just happen. And, we call them MOC moments because there's just so many of them. I could go on for days, but
I'm
it's really
sure.
incredible when you see, music really move someone in that way.
Wow. I was never a coffee drinker until about 3 years ago after my sister coaxed me into trying espresso. I have to admit, I loved that caffeine boost and the strong flavor of espresso. But I saw that people who drank it every day didn't even feel that caffeine boost anymore, and they felt horrible and got headaches if they didn't have their morning caffeine. So I let myself have espresso a few days a week, and I went in search of a morning beverage for the rest of the days, something that would still boost my mental clarity and energy. I was thrilled when I discovered mud water. It was created by an artist and dad who used to be addicted to coffee. He started to blend mushrooms like lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, and chaga with superfoods and spices. I've become a huge fan of the original masala chai, a blend that supports gut health and immune function, along with energy and focus. Try it yourself and get a discount up to 53% at mudwater.com/enhance life. Mudwater is spelled Mudwtr. A link is in the show notes. Well, Musicians on Call does have a huge list of partnering celebrity musicians. You mentioned a couple. I mentioned a couple in the introduction. You partnered with Dolly Parton. You
Mhm.
mentioned Reba, Blake Shelton, Keith Urban, Winona Judd, Luke Bryan. But it's not just country musicians. I know the first Musicians on Call concert was performed by Wynton Marsalis,
Uh-huh.
and Bruce Springsteen was an early supporter, which, if we
Mhm.
have time, we can maybe talk about his involvement in the origins of MLC. But you also have a lot of non-celebrity volunteers. Tell us what draws musicians, including so many celebrity artists, to
Yeah.
partner with MOC? What feedback do you hear from them after
Yeah.
they've participated?
Well, the celebrity musicians are so helpful because they're the ones that draw the awareness to musicians on call. You hear Keith Urban shows up at a hospital, you're going to hear about it, right?
Yeah.
And it's Keith Urban actually played in a Nashville hospital, and it like changed a family's life. Like, he was
Oh,
there and played for a patient who had been, going through a really, really hard time, a terminal illness, and it was the last time they got to see their child light up
oh,
and smile, and they have
oh,
this
yeah.
memory that they will carry for life, right? So
Mhm.
so the celebrity involvement is so important, and they get so much back, emotionally from that, when they go into the hospital. But then the core of our program is our regular local volunteer musicians. We cannot do musicians on call without our local musicians. So, if we're in Richmond, Virginia, or Boston, or Phoenix, those aren't typically cities that you think of as music cities, right? And so when they have a lot of really talented musicians, and we need those local volunteers to be the ones that are going to the hospitals every week. We try to be there every week when we go into a new city, so that way the staff get familiar with our program and know that our volunteers are trained. They know which rooms to go into, which rooms not to go into, and they follow all the hospital protocols. So we're trying to be there on a regular basis. And we've even heard caregivers request to work, like, I'm working Wednesday night because that's when Musicians on Call is going to be
Oh,
there. So, so we can't do our program around the country if we don't have local musicians. So we have, people who can sing and play the guitar, some people who sing and then they bring in an accompanist with them. So we have people who might play classical guitar or might play a different type of instrument. We even some wind instruments. We have some people coming in and playing those. And, it's when you're in the hospital, anytime someone comes by, if you're feeling up to it, to have a little bit of music, it just really brightens your day. And like you said, brings normalcy back into your life.
yeah. I think you've answered a little bit of my next question, which was I was going to ask how recipients of this gift of music are identified. Like, how do you decide who gets a visit from a musician and how do you match the artist with the patient? But it sounds like you have more of a schedule of
Hmm.
having a volunteer go into a facility and then does the nurse team kind of give them some room numbers like, hey, this person might be interested, check in with them. How does that
Yeah.
work?
Well, usually we actually go to the nurse's station and we ask, is there any room you don't want us to see? If you
Hmm.
want us to skip a room, like if someone should not be bothered. So that way we know, we try to, if we're going to a specific unit, we try to get to everybody on that unit so no one feels left out.
Okay.
And so our guides are trained to just knock on the door. And that's why it takes a special kind of volunteer to be comfortable enough to just knock on anyone's hospital door, not knowing what's going on the other side, right? So I'm
Yeah.
knocking on the door, going in saying, "Hi, I'm Katy and I'm with Musicians on Call. I have someone out here that'll play a song for you if you feel up to it." And, that way the patient gets the choice, yes or no. Because typically when you're in the hospital, you don't get a choice. Like, you're taking this kind of medicine, you're having this test, you have to have this surgery. You don't get many choices. So to be able to say, no, I'm not feeling so good right now, thank you anyway, at least we've empowered them to make a choice.
Yeah.
And typically, if we then move on to the next room, you sometimes will see someone's head poke out of the door and they're like, "Wait, did you just say you'd bring music in my room?" And then we'll circle back and go back and say, "Yeah,
I
we're
changed
here."
my
And so
mind.
yeah. So, so yeah, it's really, we don't always know who we play for. We might never know who we've played for. I've been out wearing my Musicians on Call T-shirt, and someone will stop me and say, "Oh my gosh, you guys played for my mom," or
Ah,
"You played, this was years ago, but," and then they'll tell you their story. And
mhm.
because of HIPAA and all the privacy in hospitals, we never know. We don't
Yeah,
have a chart with names or anything. We
sure.
just are knocking on the doors. And if sometimes we'll see on social media, someone will share their experience with us, which we love because then we can follow up with them to share their story. But it's, we never really know who we've played for.
Yeah. For musicians who aren't celebrities, but
Hmm.
they do play an instrument, they are a vocalist, whatever it is, what is Musicians on Call, what is their criteria for their volunteer musicians?
For the musicians, you have to be at least 18 years old you have to do a background check. And we have certain criteria for musicians. The music has to be appealing, and we kind of have like a rating system to make sure music is soothing. We're not playing any kind of like heavy metal in a hospital, obviously. So we have a program team that will review every application and screen it for suitability for a hospital. And then sometimes we just have to coach some musicians on what lyrics are appropriate. We're not going to sing anything about loneliness or dying or crying, or so we
Yeah.
have a hospital approved songs that we recommend people to sing. And if a vocalist wants to team up with a friend to go as a pair, we can do that and have them go room to room together. And there's also opportunities for non musicians, which I was describing the guide role.
Right.
And that is so important because we can't do Musicians on Call without the volunteer guides either. So the volunteer guide applies through Musicians on Call's website, and then we direct them to one of our partner hospitals to apply there as well because they have to get a volunteer ID badge at that hospital. So
Ah,
once we have that volunteer at the hospital and they have their badge, then they're approved to escort musicians throughout the hospital. So the
Okay.
volunteer guide knows like which floor to go to, which rooms you can or can't go into, depending on the different types of precautions in the hospital. So it's not as easy as just, oh, I'm play music, I'm going to go show up at a hospital. Like we have a lot of training that we make sure that musicians and guides know, what HIPAA laws are and how we can't take pictures in the hospital. We protect patients' privacy and infection control, all of those things that make sure it's safe for both the volunteers and for the patients.
Yeah. Well, and as a musician, that would be very reassuring for me to know
Mhm.
that if I sign up for this, I'm going to have some training because
Mhm.
as somebody who's not living in that healthcare setting and that world, I know that I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of things out there that I like. I'm sure
Mm,
there's stuff I need to know here, and I know
yeah.
I don't know it. So
Uh-huh.
it would be really nice to know that that training comes along with signing up with for volunteering. And I'll just
Mhm.
point out too, while I'm thinking of it, you do have a volunteer application on the Musicians on Call website. And I think most of your volunteers volunteer like once a month. Is that
Once
right?
a month, yeah, because we know volunteering, you're giving up of your time and, being away from your family, and we appreciate that and respect that, and so we just require people to volunteer once a month, so that way they can stay, the rules of a hospital can stay fresh in their mind,
Yeah.
and, yeah, and I think it's also reassuring for the musicians knowing that they don't have to worry about where do I go, what do I what rooms do I go into? That's why the volunteer guide is there, and we can let the musician know, like, "You don't have to worry about any of that, you're focused on what songs you're going to play and your music while you have this escort that's guiding you through the hospital."
Sure. Anything else that you want people to know who may feel intimidated about
Mhm.
volunteering, in addition to knowing that there will be some training, anything
Mhm.
else that you want them to know?
I would just say anybody going to our website, it's musiciansoncall.org, and I think it's /volunteer where you can fill out a volunteer application. I always tell people the hardest part is just getting started. So filling out the application and submitting everything, getting approved, just knowing that that process and getting approved by the hospital takes some time, and the training videos take a little bit of time, but that's an effort to give, gold star training and make sure people feel comfortable once they get into the hospital setting and making sure both patients and volunteers are protected. So once you get started and get past the training, that's the hardest part. Then you can just show up once a month and you're going to know where to go, what to do. And it's about 2 hours out of your month. And it's really rewarding. You could be having the hardest day, whether it's at work or at home, and you're just like, oh, now I got to go to the hospital. There's one more thing to do. But by the time you get there and you start volunteering, by the time you leave, I can almost guarantee it, you're gonna be like, "Oh, man, I just heard 10 people say I made their day." Like, it
Ah,
is the best medicine, even if you're not a musician. Like, you will change somebody's life and their experience in a hospital. I can almost guarantee it. So, I think
mhm.
it's worth the time to put in the application and the training because what you get back on the other side of it is so, so fulfilling.
Oh, and you mentioned 2 hours.
Mhm.
That's kinda like the shift, it's
That's like
just
the
2
shift.
hours?
Yep. Yeah, and so
Nice.
we get there, it's typically at 5:30 because most of the doctor's visits and all of that have ended by then,
Okay.
and people are kinda winding down. So we try to see as many people as we can between about 5:30 and 7. So sometimes we say 2 hours just to be safe.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, it's not 2 straight hours of performing, it's a lot of walking around, talking to people, making introductions in patient rooms. But we
Sure.
usually tell musicians to have 3 to 4 hospital-friendly songs prepared, some that are upbeat, some that are a little bit more mellow, and then you kinda rotate those songs from room
Ah,
to room,
yeah.
and, depending on what people wanna hear.
Yeah, that sounds very doable. I mean, I
Yeah.
in my mind, I guess I was thinking, "Oh, if you're volunteering, you're probably spending your whole Saturday there," or something like that, but, oh, yeah,
Mm-mm.
2 hours, that's very doable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a couple, like, seasonal factors that I
Mhm.
wanna point out, and one of them, you were just kind of alluding to this, is obviously, this is an incredible gift for recipients, but this is also such an incredible opportunity for volunteers who
Mhm.
may find the holidays to be a really hard time. I mean, giving back, like you said, it does give so much joy to know that you've
Mhm.
made somebody's day, and it helps us get our minds off our own troubles or our own loneliness. Taking
Mhm.
action is a hugely potent antidote for anxiety.
Mhm.
And this particular action could be a huge catalyst for gratitude. Just seeing somebody
Mhm.
who's in maybe a worse place than you are, or have different troubles than you do. I've heard that saying that if we all put our troubles in a big pile and looked at
Mhm.
them, would probably take our own troubles back with us and like, "You know what? I
I've
think I'll
never
take
heard
mine."
that, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're
So,
right.
I think I'll stick with this baggage.
Mhm.
So, just seeing somebody else's troubles could be just a stimulation for gratitude, which is a powerful stimulant of joy
Mhm.
in and of itself. So I think this
Mhm.
could be really just a joy inspiring activity and way to
Mhm.
give back for the volunteers.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
also
and
mention, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and, you know, a lot of people when January 1st hits, you make your New Year's resolution to go to the gym or, something like that, but maybe make it your New Year's resolution to sign up to volunteer. I think that
Yeah.
that is a great time to get started. We have programs in about 24, 25 markets across the country, and I'm always looking to add more volunteers. Even if we're not in your city, you can volunteer virtually with Musicians on Call, and that's where you can log in through Zoom, and we host virtual programs for patients in hospitals across the country where we're not can't physically be yet, and so we do have opportunities for everyone.
Mm. One other seasonal factor I'll bring up is you're a nonprofit organization. So if
Mhm.
listeners are looking to give a year-end tax deductible gift,
Ah,
I'm assuming you can take
absolutely.
advantage or you can be a recipient of that?
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
musiciansoncall.org is our website. You can make a donation to support our programs, and we would be so grateful for that support.
Okay. And then a couple non-seasonal factors. One, as we've already mentioned and you just referred back to, we need these volunteers year round. So
Mhm.
maybe, hey, come January 1st, that's part of your new year plan and strategy for a goal or a way of giving back or bringing joy into your own life is giving back in this way. And then another sort of non seasonal factor or question, if somebody maybe they're working in a healthcare setting or a hospice or they have a loved one in one of these
Mhm.
settings, is there a way for them to request that musicians on call come into their facility if they're not already there? Or how do they find out
Yeah.
if the musicians on call even offers services in their facility?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the most timely one, if someone has a loved one in the hospital today and is like, how can I have music for them? We do have a virtual request form where we can set up a virtual visit for someone if it is a timely thing. So, going to our website and submitting a form for that. We also have a hospital application on our website. So hospitals
Ah,
can go and submit their information where they can request a program. And, that does take a little bit of time to review the applications and figure out if we're able to expand. But then we have our virtual programs that happen, all week. And so we can also work with a hospital to set that up for their patients
mm,
to tune into our virtual programs as well.
wonderful. I want to close with just a quote that I saw on your website by Kelly Clarkson. She said, "Being involved with Musicians on Call has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my career. I consider it a great gift to be able to share music and bring smiles to these brave children and their loved ones. It is healing for us all, and I can't wait to do it again." So I love that
Aw,
quote of hers.
I love that so much. I've been lucky enough to go on several of Kelly's hospital visits.
Oh, really?
And yes, she is, I mean, just like a ball of energy, a ball of like normal. Like you don't wouldn't think that with such a
Mm,
massive celebrity,
yeah.
but she comes in her sometimes she would do Christmas visits and she would come in her Christmas sweater and no makeup, and she would just be there with the kids, and sometimes she would spend 5 and 6 hours at the hospital because she
Oh,
was not gonna
wow.
leave until she saw every single kiddo that wanted to visit
Mhm.
and didn't want the cameras following her around or anything. Like, she has a heart of gold, and we are so lucky that Kelly Clarkson has volunteered with us as much as she has. So, I love
That's
that quote.
awesome. Well, and as big a name as she is, I've gotta imagine she goes into rooms where
Mhm.
people don't know her. I
Yeah.
personally don't follow country music super closely,
Mhm.
and so I could be one of those people where
I
she
know,
walked
yeah.
into the room and I'm like, "Oh, how nice,
Oh, hey.
somebody's playing a song for me."
Yeah,
So
I know that has happened before with others, and but people are. If you're the kind of person who's coming into a hospital as a celebrity, you know that their heart isn't for the right reason, and they are
yeah,
not going to care at all. And we're so lucky to have gotten so many great musicians, both celebrities and non-celebrities,
yeah.
to volunteer with us in the past.
Uh, well, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and just all that you're doing and your team is doing to enhance lives with music. It's so fun to hear about this. And I hope listeners will be encouraged to go on your website and check out all that you offer and check out the opportunities to get involved, whether it's
Hmm.
financially or with donating time, whether they're a musician or not, you have opportunities. So, love that. Katy, as you know, I ask all my guests to close out our conversation with a musical ending, a coda,
Hmm.
by sharing a song or story about a moment that music enhanced your life. I'm sure you
Hmm.
have tons of them, but is there a song or story that you can share with us in closing today?
Yeah, I do, and it kind of goes back to what you were asking about research earlier. And after I had two kids, I had to have a minor surgery, and when I got a letter from them a week ahead, and it said, "Hey, if you need anxiety medicine before your surgery, make sure you request that within like 48 hours." And I was like, "What? Why would I need anxiety medicine? Like, do I need anxiety?" And now I wasn't anxious, but now I'm anxious, right? And so I thought to myself, I'm like, wait a minute. I have been telling people for 15 years that music reduces anxiety. It helps with pain management. It does all these things. I was like, why don't I try it? And so this was during COVID where you couldn't bring anyone to into a hospital with you. But
Yeah.
I had my coworker who is a musician and volunteers with us. And I told her, I said, hey, Kelly, I know this is random, but will you be like on call for me when I go into my surgery? If the doctor says you can come in pre-op on Zoom, will you play some music for me? And she was like, yeah, of course. Yeah. And so I get in there and I'm starting to get anxious. And I told my husband, oh, I should have got the medicine. And he's like, you're fine. You're fine. I go, he can't come back with me. So I go back and he said, I say to the doctor, like, hey, I work for Musicians on Call and we talk about music reducing anxiety and blood pressure and all that. And he's like, you can't have a musician come back here. And I was like, well, I know, but I do have someone on Zoom that's waiting that could play music. And he goes, you have someone on Zoom ready to play music for you? And I said, yeah, I do. And he goes, well, bring him on. So we got my phone out and we had her and he set the phone up. And this surgeon was like, do you know this song? Do you know this? And he's like asking her all these like rock songs. Surgery started. Like we're full on surgery. She's 6 songs in. The nurses are dancing. He's dancing, requesting songs. And I'm like, he's like, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm good. Like this is actually fun. So when you talked earlier about how music can like transform the environment of a hospital room, like that was the day I like put Musicians on Call to the test.
You
That I was like,
experienced it firsthand.
I did. Like the anxiety went away. The environment clearly was different. I can pretty
Yeah.
much bet that no other nurse or doctor was like dancing around a room during surgery before. So I fully believe that music can transform a hospital room. It can transform the experience of being in a hospital, and it can for sure, reduce anxiety levels when you have music playing, or an experience like Musicians on Call, because we're creating not just the music, but the human connection of having someone there with you. You're sharing that musical experience with someone else, and it's creating all of that connection. And so that's my coda. Since I can't sing or play anything for you, I just want to share that experience because I put it to the test and know it works.
What a great story of putting this mission to the test. Thank you so much to Katy and the MOC team for enhancing lives with music for patients, their loved ones, hospital staff, and the volunteers themselves. Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, I hope this conversation inspires you to make music a part of your holiday and your New Year strategy for your own well being and for giving back and paying it forward in your community. Links to musicians on call are in the show notes, as well as a transcript of this conversation and related episodes you may enjoy, including music for physicians, for veterans, for the cancer journey, and music especially for hospitalized kiddos. All Enhanced Life with Music episodes are evergreen, so check out the back catalog for more ways that music can make your life better. If you know of someone who would enjoy this episode, perhaps a medical professional or someone with a loved one in the hospital, please share it with them. It's easy to do right in your podcast listening app. And if Musicians on Call is not yet available in your area or your facility, be sure to fill out their form to request it. Thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing the show. You can always connect with me on email, mindy@mpetersonmusic.com, Facebook, Instagram, X, or LinkedIn, and by signing up for my monthly e-newsletter. Until next time, may your life be enhanced with music.